Good afternoon, everyone. As always, it's nice to see you. Nice to be with you. Today, we have the first of a two-part program for all of you who are interested in food production and specifically gardening. I've been a gardener almost my entire life, and I'm still learning, always learning, and I hope that you are too. So this week, our guests are Kurt and Lucinda from Texas Ready. We'll go into introducing them in just a moment. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to let you guys know that I've been traveling since the end of April. I'm headed to Maine. I will be producing the show from the beautiful oceanside view that is where we often are in the springtime in Lubec, Maine. So I'll be there for the next 2 weeks, and the show will continue to come to you. This week, of course, as I said, is the first of a two-part show. So next week we'll do the second part, which I'm excited about. And then I will be at the Food Independence Summit, the 18th and 19th of June in Walnut Creek, Ohio. I'll be giving a presentation there. I give so many. I don't remember what that particular one is. But the following week, I will be near Millersburg, Pennsylvania for the Natural Hope Herbals Wellness Day. There I will be speaking on the topic of food before supplements. And that to me is a very important topic, very near and dear to my heart. So if you'd like to be where we are, those 2 weeks in June are easy to find me. Don't come find me in Maine. I might have to call the police. I'm just kidding. I have a couple of other things coming up later, but just to keep you abreast of where we're going and what we're doing for the next month and a half, that's where we'll be. And I'll be bringing you lots of more great information, interviews, and interesting people to talk with. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lucinda Bailey from Texas Ready. And there she is with Kurt Nacht. I hope I pronounced that right. And they're gardening, that looks like beans. I can't really tell. But Lucinda, hello. How are you? Oops, wait a second.
We enjoyed the Polyface conference together, and it was good to renew your acquaintance. Joel, of course, Joel Salatin is a big fan of your entire group. It's a very needful thing. And with America's focus right now on health and nutrition, it just seems so timely for our collaboration.
I agree. I'm very thankful for the change in administration and some of the goals that are set out, some improvements that we see happening right now and more coming down the pike, I think. It's going to be interesting to see what all is accomplished. But I think that you and I can agree, as our audience will too, that we really do need to learn how to grow at least a portion of our own food. The more, the better. And then, of course, part two is how to preserve the food. And I'm excited about that next week because I'm really, I'm enthusiastic about preserving the harvest in the best way possible. And I won't give away what is the big no-no. Our regular listeners will already be aware of that. But you, Lucinda, and Kurt are very much focused on helping people to be able to grow an abundant harvest and even to save money doing so with saving seeds and such. So I'd like to get started first, Lucinda, by having you tell us a little bit about Texas Ready, how it came to be, and what your overall focus are.
We'd love to do that. About 15 years ago, I was in the financial services industry in a whole variety of positions. And I realized after reading a lot of the European papers and so forth, that nothing was going to get better in the next couple decades. And so at that point, we were only, $6 trillion in debt? And now we're at 39 trillion in debt. So it's only gotten more concerning. So I realized that, it's not God's plan that anybody be in that kind of debt or even a country be in that kind of debt. And so there are repercussions that are perhaps we have not experienced the full brunt of those.
Yeah.
But the risk is extremely high. The political system is somewhat of a house of cards, as all of us would know, no matter what party is in position of authority. So I realized that we needed to take back the reins of food production. We actually started thinking we should sell to our friends, church buddies, and family 6-month dehydrated or freeze-dried products, a
Yeah.
whole menu. But then $1.3 billion later, the U.S. government had contracted with Mountain House and the next 9 houses or companies that sold freeze-dried, and we knew we would not get product for 6, 8, 9 months if we were going to get any at all. So at that point, we realized we needed to step back and put our own seed bank together, which is a collection of those high-producing heirloom seeds that will work well in our geographical area. I thought it'd be a snap. It took me 3 months, and I still couldn't find what was going to work. We had such ridiculous options as a guy who wanted to sell 30 carrot seeds, 30 corn seeds, 30 beet seeds, and etc. That won't work because many of these seeds, corn in particular, need a whole number so that the whole batch of garden 2, 3, 4 do not become inbred and depressive. You know, you can think about the kings of England that intermarried and bred, and they had a lot of problems with the royal line. Well, that can happen in the garden too, and I knew that. So I was very discouraged with what was on the market. There wasn't a good product. So that kind of forced our hand to start our own seed bank. Then our friends heard about that, and they wanted their kit, and just kind of multiplied. And we realized that there was a entrepreneurial opportunity, which I had been looking for. I didn't want to do financial services anymore because I didn't believe it was good putting people in high-risk mortgages and so forth. So I wanted something that was totally in alignment with God's purposes. And what could be more natural than seeds? In Genesis, of course, he says, I have given you the seed. That means he's given us the means of production, right?
That's right.
And the prophets, it says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so it behooves us to take that discipline to get that knowledge. And although I had gardened all my life, like you said, you're always learning.
Yeah. If ever we say, okay, we know it all, that's when you need to run away from me or from you or anybody who says that, because this lifetime that we each are given is meant for us to continue to learn and grow and never feel like we know it all. I think that's just arrogant, but there are many people who do maybe not articulate it in that way, but behave in that way. There's always so much more to learn. And I've changed what I do multiple times over the years. I'm still changing. I found some things that work great and some things I'm still tweaking and some things that I will change in particular as I'm reading, and we'll get to it in a moment. But it's curious to think about, there didn't used to be seed companies. People passed down seeds, people saved seeds. People were always trying to improve seeds and stock, but you can't. Well, let's get into that first by articulating the difference between heirloom, hybrid, and GMO seeds, if you'd like to address that.
Sure. You can just break down all the seed into 2 camps. Open pollinated, which means that if the genetics are protected, which we'll talk about later, if the genetics are protected, then the second year garden will replicate what you had on your seed packet. It will produce what they call true to type.
Right.
Within that category, heirlooms have been around for at least 25 generations, 25 gardens, and that watermelon tastes the same, looks the same, and has the same nutritive value as the first garden of that watermelon. And so that is a very stabilized seed. Now, the other kind of seed is a hybrid. And in in our economy, I don't particularly lean that direction because if the supply chains crater like they did during COVID, you couldn't buy seed in Michigan. That was considered a non-essential item by the governor of Michigan, and it
That's
prevented people
bonkers.
from buying seed. So we know that this can happen. There are power-hungry people that will make it so.
Yeah.
Hybrids can happen naturally through wind and so forth. And then other people that want to make, well, maybe a pink geranium, a red geranium, and you have a white seed, we put them together and we pollinate, we manually would pollinate that plant. And then the next spring we have this pink thing. But it will never revert back to a red or a white. Okay, you can't go backwards up the chain and you're not going to get the same thing. Now, there are 3 outcomes of all hybrids. And I can't tell you, because there's so many species out there, which species is going to do A, B, or C. The first potentially bad outcome is that 50% will be sterile like a mule. So that's not really good if we want to have sustainability and feed our families. The second is it could be a mutant. Many of us have planted cucumbers, and lo and behold, that crop is a gourd. It's very hard all the way through. It doesn't taste good, and it certainly isn't a cucumber. Or the third outcome, and this happens a lot in the tomato family, is we have plants that will revert up the genetic chain, and we don't know where they're going to land. And so that is not a solid outcome for someone like myself that's concerned about producing nutritive value and is it actually going to feed my family? So hybrids are 1 and open pollinated are 2. And heirlooms are solidly within the stability factors of the open pollinated. So we prefer taking the open pollinated because what we want to do is show you how to protect the genetics, and that way you never have to buy seed again. So I want to save you a lot of money. Now, seed companies would rather have you be the customer for life and come back every spring and spend a boatload of money. It's just not necessary if you learn a few techniques.
Okay. And it still is fun to come up with a new seed now and then to try something new. But what you're saying and what I'm thinking also is that the plants that you've planted, say I get some seed from you and I plant, those plants that do well in my area are going to be the plants from which I want to collect my seed for the next year because they will have proven strong and grow well in my area.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I neglected to say where the GMOs end up. Those are solidly within the hybrids, right? Not all hybrids are GMOs, but all GMOs are hybrids. And a GMO, of course, would be a genetically modified, genetically manipulated situation. There might be some CRISPR technology in there. And that is something I just definitely want to avoid at all costs. I don't want my animals eating that kind of food, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, not fit for human or animal consumption. It's been interesting to me to see how genetically modified seed can cross-pollinate with an open pollinated variety of something and then corrupt it. I remember years ago seeing a study in Mexico in an isolated mountain region where they were just growing several strains of traditional maize, corn.
Right.
And when it was tested, it was found to be corrupted with genetically modified corn seed from many, many miles away. So that's something to be mindful of.
I have people that say, oh, I live on a 10-acre piece and we have a big buffer of forest, et cetera, et cetera. That it will not protect you with wind-driven situations. Right. Corn, like you mentioned, is particularly susceptible to this. And all the cornfields of Iowa and Indiana carry strains, DNA strains from China. So that's a long way away. So
that's interesting. Several of our listeners are from Iowa. And I'm thinking because of the wide open space, flat, not so much mountains and hills and valleys, that it's probably even more susceptible to drifting and cross-pollination, even from many miles away. So are there Are there some precautions that people can take? Say they start with heirloom seeds.
Right. There are, and there are 17 major seed families. And so not to be overwhelmed with the issue, let's just look at one family right now. And you're
Okay.
going to see that if you learn how to save seeds in that family, then you can branch out and do everything in that family with the same technique. So
Okay.
if you were going to plant pumpkin, what's kind of similar to the way the pumpkins operate? You're going to have, cantaloupe, melon, watermelon, cucumber. You can see how this squash, okay?
Yeah.
They all operate the same. So in the case of a squash, you have a male flower and you have a female flower. A lot of our listeners didn't know that. But it's pretty easy to tell because the stalk on the male flower is straight like a pencil. And the one on the female flower, it has a little bulb. They call that the ovary. And so you can identify the male and female flowers relatively easily. Now, the one thing to note is that when the first blush of flowering occurs on that family, pumpkin, watermelon, it doesn't matter, you're going to have 90% male and 10% female. In the middle of the season, it's a balance. And at the end, it reverts to 90% female flowers and 10% male. So it's a real trick to get all the timing right, but it can be done.
Okay.
So what you would do is you don't want any wind contamination or most likely insect contamination. So bees fly 6 miles. So a bee lands in a hybrid squash patch and picks up all kind of hybrid that you don't want. It flies to your backyard and it's a silent killer. You're not even going to see this or know this. It comes and mates with your heirloom female, and it will produce, you won't even notice it because the first year you're eating your zucchini or yellow crookneck squash. You won't even taste it or know it, but next year's seed will be problematic for you. And it could have one of those 3 bad things: sterility, mutation, or up the genetic chain. You don't want that. So the way to fix that is taught in this wonderful book called Seed to Seed.
Yeah.
And this is the Bible on seed saving. There's just no question about it. The woman that wrote it, Susan Ashworth, has 3 master's degrees. She's taught at university. She's a very accomplished person. There are regional experts that supplemented her very scholarly presentation. There are about 7 or 8 different seed saving books out there. This is by far the legitimate Bible on seed saving. And what she says is that before the bees even come into the garden, the first time you see those flowers, what you're going to do is take a little masking tape or paint tape, so it's not going to be super sticky. You're going to close the petals on the male and tape it. Then for the female, you're going to do the very same thing. And you don't need to do this for all the hundreds of flowers that you have in your 20-foot squash patch. Just maybe 3 plants. You don't want to pick just one because the risk is too high. But if you had 3 different plants and you did that 5-minute task, then what you're going to do is keep alert and watch for the day that there's a ton of bees messing around in the garden. That is when the plants are fertile. Okay?
But they're putting off a hormone or a pheromone.
They are. They're attracting the pollinators. But you don't want any of the hybrids. So what you do is you go over to the male that has been taped and you break him off at the, where it's on the vine, and you peel back all the petals so it now looks like a Q-tip. You open up the female and spread her petals out, and then you just kind of self-pollinate with that male stalk, okay? She's taken care of, right? She's been pollinated by an heirloom. But you don't want to run the risk that down the road, Mr. B is going to carry some hybrid. It's actually Mrs. B because the workers are all female. And, you don't want any of her pollen. So what you're going to do is retape that female up, tie a yellow ribbon or some notification on that because you will not remember which of your plants.
Yeah.
And then when mama says, go get, zucchini, she doesn't mean the one with the yellow ribbon around it. That is your future seed
Seed.
bank, seed stock,
Yeah.
seed collection for that breed of squash. And
That makes so much
it
sense.
does. And you're going to leave that squash on the plant another 2 weeks so it becomes seasoned. And as you're pulling off, your yellow crookneck squash or zucchini or whatever it is, when it's ripe and when it's overripe. The belly of the gourd will get a little bit yellow or creamy colored and a little mushy. Good. You leave it on there another 2 weeks, and that will be your seed for next year. And there's techniques
Okay.
on how to dry it properly without, you don't want to put your seed saving situation in the UV. It needs to be without direct sunlight. Every single one of these 17 different kinds of seed families will tell you that they do better out of the direct sun.
Well, there are two things about that are very interesting to me. One is that we're talking squash, and I don't remember what variety of squash, but it's one of my favorites. It's a pumpkin, actually. And I didn't get around to roasting it. So it sat in my living room looking pretty on my buffet for months. And then back in maybe March, I don't know when it was, but I opened up the pumpkin, just wanting to see if I could still use it, bake it or whatever. And it was full of sprouted pumpkin seeds.
There you go.
And so I took them out and I put them in soil. I didn't have time to go outside to my garden, but I put them in soil, covered them, kept them moist. And then eventually I took them out and planted some in the garden. But I actually wasn't all that aware that seeds could sprout inside of the host or the parent plant. I think they can. And this was an abundance of seed. So my other thought is I had previously thought that you needed to let a fruit or a vegetable completely ripen on the vine and then dry out before you saved the seed, but that's not what you're telling me.
No, you do let that squash hang on the vine at least 2 weeks longer than the things that you're picking for your table. Okay. You want them to get that at that point, you do want the whole fruit to get the sunlight and so forth.
Okay.
But when you're drying the seed later on, after you've pulled it, because it's now a little soft on the belly, you don't want it to rot in the garden, but you want to put away those seeds so that you can use them next spring. Mm-hmm. At that time, you definitely don't want the UV rays on the seeds that you've pulled out. You can take a knife and cut the squash in half, and you want to take the little fibrous, hairy stuff off. You're going to rinse it and so forth. So at that point, you want to put it on a cookie sheet and dry it out. The top of the refrigerator is a great place for that because there's a little tiny bit of heat that's going to come off naturally from your refrigerator. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want it to be exposed to sunlight.
That's right. Yeah. And I don't know too many refrigerators that are getting direct sunlight out of your window. So it works just fine.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And the beautiful thing is in that seed to seed book, there are like 6 or 8 pictures that described exactly what I've just talked about. So it's a sort of step by step. It's things that we should have, could have, wish we would have learned from the knee of our grandparents. But most of us didn't do that. Mm-hmm. But these were things that the old timers knew all about. All the people in the Depression knew this. 95% of the people could provide for their own food. And as a matter of fact, during World War II, 50% of agriculture was grown by women and children in their own backyards.
They had victory gardens.
Yes. So, I just want to encourage people that, yes, it seems a little daunting when you haven't, this is all kind of new, but just take one seed family, master that, and then look, you've got your pumpkin squash, melon, cantaloupe, watermelon. You get a whole bunch of things that you like to eat, all done the same way, and you're good. Give yourself an A on the report card. You're good.
That is really cool. And I didn't know all of that. So see, we're always learning.
You betcha.
Always learning, just as we should. Now, you gave me a book last weekend, which is right here. And I have started to read this, and I'm going to finish it while I'm in Maine. But can you tell me a little bit about this method of gardening and why it's different than what
Sure.
most of us might be accustomed to?
Right. In the main, we've all been exposed to the fix the dirt method. You've got your
Mm.
organic, your traditional gardeners. You've got your, there's a Ruth method where you're layering different things, the lasagna
Bristol.
method, the keyhole method, the square foot gardener. They're all in that methodology, right?
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
and that's all well and good. Permaculture would be in there as well. But there's another method that's less known that Mr. Mittleider was instrumental in pioneering. He was a baker that turned to be an agronomist, and he was a very, very successful one. And he documented his 55 years of studies, and he tweaked his preparations and so forth. And his philosophy, very much like the people that participate in hydroponics or aquaponics, is
Mhm.
I am going to provide the nutrition that the plant roots need. And so that's what he did. He discovered, chemically, and they teach this at every ag school in America. There are 16 essential elements that a plant needs. So
Okay.
Mr. Mittleider's idea was good. Let's get them in the right arithmetic, the formula, the balance, because too much boron potentially toxifies your plant. Too little, you won't have seeds. So you have to have that sweet spot. So Mr.
Okay.
Mittleider indeed found that sweet spot and wanted to make gardening very easy for the backyard quarter acre subdivision HOA person, all the way up to the 10-acre homesteading person. And that
Okay.
is what his life legacy is. So he teaches you to provide the plant what it needs, when it needs it, and in the manner that that plant needs it. For example,
Okay.
most people do not know that plants cannot uptake organic material. It has to, those things that you put to do the composting and so forth
Mhm.
in the garden, they have to go through a long series of chemical reactions until they become inorganic molecules, and they have to
Yeah.
be wet before the roots can uptake them. Whereas Mittleider bypasses all that time frame and makes bioavailable nutrition for your plants available on a daily basis. And
Okay.
he does supplement and amend just like traditional and organic farmers do at the beginning of a season. He'll put the four components, which would be your calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and boron. Now, those do not volatilize. So you can load up your garden in the right form, the right mathematical formulation in what we call pre-plant. That's equivalent to what a mother would use a prenatal vitamin as she's
Okay.
preparing her body to get ready to have that baby in a year. Okay, it's the same philosophy. We're going to load our garden and we're going to have the seed sprout or the transplants be in. And whenever they need it, they can go get a meal from the calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and boron. Okay,
Okay.
there's
When
other
we need it.
elements. Yeah, there's many other elements that volatilize. So if you put down a lot of nitrogen, as many traditional and organic farmers do at the beginning of the season, but you don't feed your plants on a regular basis the rest of your garden cycle, you can
Yeah.
have a lot of deficiencies, and the plant is certainly going to take a lot longer to finish out its crop. It will never be as healthy, the seeds will never be as strong as a plant that gets what it needs on a daily basis. And that is the Mittleider system. They top dress what they call a weekly feed. And
Yeah.
it's a combination of elements that you guys can purchase locally. Your NPK, those are heavy elements. I don't want to have to package that up and sell them to people and charge them for labor. You can pick it up at Lowe's, Home Depot. Every Tractor Supply. These are easily accessible major elements.
And that's where conventional agronomists really typically stop, conventional
That's
farmers.
right.
It's
You're right.
NPK.
It's the
So,
trace elements that are going to
mm,
get you the nutrient density that we all crave. And I just love the name of your organization because it is so true.
Yeah.
Your folks probably have heard of the Brix Index.
Yep.
So anybody that grows hops, they test the plant 3 different places, they test the juices, and they compare that with a refractometer and decide, oh yeah, today's the day I need to harvest because the ratios are in the excellent category. Your people that produce wine do this very same thing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that was where
you know,
I first learned of the refractometers and the Brix level, looking for the amount of sugar in the sap of the
that's
plant.
right. Yeah, and it's a test, a ratio of the sugars to protein ratios. And it's very similar to the technology that a lot of diabetics use to test their blood. Okay. So
Okay.
it's the same kind of principle. And we have found that the nutritional density of the Mittleiter produce is far superior to any of the other garden methods. And for that reason, we use it. But there's another major reason we use that method, Maureen. And that
Yeah.
has to do with the fact that in a down economy, Farmer Jones is not going to drop off a load of chicken, you know what, on your driveway. He is
Yeah.
not coming, right? It's too dangerous or whatever, or he's going to be using that himself.
Yeah.
So the supply chain issues are still a problem in the old style gardening. And the quantity that people need, they don't even realize this. A family of 4 to get the 4,400 calories that family needs in an annual period, that will require 6 beds that are 4 foot wide by 30 foot long. So that takes up all the available space in your backyard, quarter
Yeah.
acre subdivision lot. But to refresh those beds and to rejuvenate it, because your tomato plants, year 1, have sucked out all the nutrition of the compost heap that was dropped in your driveway. And so
Yeah.
you're going to have to refresh those beds, right?
Yes.
But that only works if we can get access to that material. Oh, I can go to the park and get it. Well, really, you're going to need a shipping container, a 40-foot long shipping container worth of that stuff. Because as you know, a 6-foot compost heap will dwindle down to about 6 inches of usable material.
Yeah.
So there's just no way that is going to happen, right? And so that was a concern of mine. So I wanted to teach a method where the people could stock up on the trace elements, and we make it so easy. Like you said, they have the packets. So
Mhm.
you can get 5 packets
Mm.
for $100. That would be all the trace elements that family would need to protect themselves for 4,400 pounds times 5 years. So that's a lot of production.
Yeah.
And if you take a card table as a representation, you could put your NPK that's required, your Epsom salts, magnesium and sulfur, under there as well, your calcium, etc. So that is not a lot of space. And these trace elements are shaved minerals. What could be more natural? They're
Yeah.
not going to deteriorate over time. They're shaved rocks. And
Yeah.
no one's going to hop your fence to try to steal that stuff. So
Yeah.
there's really no reason that if you're concerned about the future, like we are,
Mhm.
that you couldn't have a 5-year, 10-year supply of what it's going to take to grow nutrient-dense food.
Wow. Okay.
So for that reason, and it's a lot less work. It's more economical, a lot less work, better production, higher nutrient density. These are the factors that led me, as someone who was teaching all different garden methodologies at college level,
Mhm.
that led me to this system. It just seemed like such a solution for such a time as this.
Yeah. And I think that what you're telling me is that in my backyard, I plant intensively. And so those backyard, they're containers, hugelkultur. I think I was telling you that I had some of
Right.
those. But I do water with the fish pond water and I add some nutrients. But when you're growing, especially intensively, that also means that those plants are taking intensively nutrients from the soil.
No,
So,
it's like a bank account.
yeah,
And those plants are extracting all the capital that you've put into that account. And at the end of the year, it's probably soil neutral. But
okay,
you don't know in traditional gardening, they don't have any arithmetic that people are taught. In Mittleiter, they know they want it to get to substrate neutral, dirt neutral. They do it in a very neutral medium. We do not expect the medium to produce anything. What we're
Okay.
expecting is that we provide that plant everything that it needs.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
like hydroponics. You don't expect the water to do much except hold the roots so the plant doesn't blow away. And it's a delivery vehicle.
A
And
delivery
that's what
system. Yeah.
it's a Mittleider has been called dirt hydroponics, kind of in a joking way, but that clarifies that the system that hydroponics, aquaponics use, along with Mittleider, is I'm going to feed the plant. Okay,
Okay.
remember we said there's two methods: fix the dirt, and
Mhm.
that can take 5 to 7 years depending on where you're from. And I don't think people have enough, kernel corn and tuna and beer saved up for that length of time. Right? So
Yeah.
we have to have successful nutrition for our families in year one, and the Mittleider method provides that.
Okay. And then these trace elements that you have packaged, are you mixing them into water, making a solution,
That
or
is a
with
great
broad?
question, and the packet does have, all the directions right on the back.
Yeah.
So we say get a couple 5-gallon buckets with great lids, right? Lowe's or Home Depot, and put 25 pounds of NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And we like it to be pretty strong, a lot stronger than, fish emulsion and chicken, and so
Okay.
forth. So those come at the ratio of 4% to 7% range. We have very strong NPK. We want that plant to uptake it and finish quick. More
Okay.
turns in the garden equal more production, less pest potential, and less deer jumping the fence and eating my food potential. So the longer your product is in the garden, the more chance and more risk you are taking. So we
Yeah,
like
that
the
makes
short,
sense.
yeah, we like the short, growth period. We can shorten a 65 day squash down to about 45 day.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, and that's because it's getting everything that it needs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just so many ways. But on our trace element packet, we've got those 2 buckets. We put 25 pounds of NPK in there. We're going to put 4 pounds of Epsom salts. That's magnesium and sulfur. And those are the macro elements that all plants need.
Okay.
Then we're going to take this one packet, split it in half, put 10 ounces in each of the buckets. We're going to give it a light stir, like you're going to do brownies. You're not going to mix it, entirely. You're just going to roughly stir it. And
Okay.
that is going to be what you need. Each bucket will be about 28 pounds, 30 pounds, in that range. And that will produce 4,400 pounds of food. You're going to top dress 1 tablespoon per linear foot. So if you have a 20-foot row, you're going to put 10 ounces down. And what
Okay.
I do is I get a Campbell's soup can that's empty, cleaned out, and that's a 10-ounce can. And I just fill it once, I'm sorry. One 10 ounces down the right side of the bed, another can full down the second side. You can see it's not rocket science. We don't have to go milligrams here, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a very quick, 1 minute per week exercise.
Okay.
And we put this underneath our water line. And we turn the water line on for 1 minute every day. And that will water this top dressed material into the root zone. And so next Monday comes around, the top of my soil is cleared out, and I know my plants are still hungry. And so I'm going to turn that water on for another minute after I have, laid down my Campbell soup can worth of plant nutrition, the weekly feed. And it's
Okay.
very simple. 8-year-old kids can do this.
Yeah, yeah, it's not
You
that
know?
hard. Now, I do want to ask you, I told you that I lay down tree mulch, straw, hay, and I let my chickens loose at various times throughout the year into my lower garden. And that is going to put more nitrogen down.
Yeah, but what about the other 15 essential elements? I mean, it's 7% nitrogen that a chicken manure, situation can do. But your broccoli is a pretty stiff thing. Your Brussels sprouts are pretty sturdy. It looks like a bat with little cabbages off the side. But that takes a lot of concentration of trace elements and these other things.
Yeah.
And
Would
chicken, you know what, doesn't produce all that.
I just call it poo,
Yeah,
Lucinda.
there you go. Okay, we understand.
No,
We're
we can
adults.
call it what
Right.
it actually is. It shouldn't really,
No,
anyway.
it's an
That's an
essential
aside.
part of living, right? It's part of
Yes,
God's processes.
absolutely. Yeah,
Right, right.
100%. I'm just wondering if I should make any adjustments in the macronutrients, meaning NPK, when I'm using that method. Maybe
We
I
should
don't
talk.
need.
We should talk because we don't want to toxify the soil at all.
Yeah.
And the spacing is something that Mittleiter really is very particular about. I mentioned Brussels sprouts. Those would be
Mhm.
placed 14 inches apart because there's a lot of sturdy fiber that goes into producing that plant. But then you have your flippy and floppy lettuces, right? And those
Yeah.
are going to be 4 inches apart and 2 rows of them. Whereas the Brussels sprouts do not operate that way. Your
Okay.
trellised plants are going to be handled a little different.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I'm thinking about adjustments that I need to make. And I'm sending a quick message. My UPS guy is here,
Oh, that's great.
and he always lets me know because I usually have heavy packages, possibly paper, and it's raining today. So anyway, I just sent my daughters out.
Yeah. I think that the best thing to do would be go ahead and you were going to read that Mittleiter Garden course.
Yeah.
We'll have more developed questions at the end of that book. Everybody seems to. That's fine. Pick up the phone and we'll chat.
Okay.
And we do that for a lot of our customers. So if you didn't have questions, I'd really worry about you, Maureen.
Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated thus far, but I have a lot more to read, and I will read it when I'm in Maine. So everyone, my
Yeah.
goal for my 2 weeks in Maine is read and write, read and write.
Beautiful. That's really great.
Yeah, and that's that and the other 2 books that I have, I intend to get read while I'm there. So I will have questions then next week. And I'm really thinking through how I do things. My broccoli is more like 8 inches apart, by the way. And right now it's doing well, but I don't know how it will fruit. So
Yes, that's right. And we're all experimenting, and that's great.
yeah,
In a nutrient dense environment, we of course can put our plants closer together.
yeah,
And Mittleiter is one of the big instigators of 3-dimensional gardening because we get the vines off the ground. Kids aren't trampling them, dogs aren't jumping on them, chickens aren't pecking at them.
yeah,
Insects find it much more difficult if it's straight up. So that's another thing. We can do watermelons up to about 8-10 pounds straight up on a trellis. So
wow.
you'll find that Mittleiter really believes in 3-dimensional gardening if at all possible.
I really like that. And I have not been able to incorporate that yet into my own gardens, but eventually I think we're going to be relocating. And that is one of my top priorities. I do want to do some archways and have
And
very,
Mittleiter's the last chapter has a materials list for if you were to do that. It has plans, building plans that you can hand to a handy husband or a person that you hire to do that.
yeah,
But they are very simple. So even though, a lot of my girlfriends are putting in archways and things like that.
yeah.
And I love the fact that it has the material list down to the screw. I mean, this guy was very meticulous, and we're benefiting from that.
That's wonderful. How long ago did he write this book? Do you know?
Actually, I have some of his earlier writings, and then you see 5 years go by and he changes something, tweaks it, and
Okay.
gets more production. I really like his attitude because if it isn't going to produce 5% more nutrition or produce, then he
Yeah.
bypasses all that energy and effort. And so a lot of the traditional chores, double digging the soil, turning it over with a rototiller, a worm bed, compost, there's 30 different chores that you don't have to do anymore freeing you up because the production just doesn't pan out. It sounds good. It's Uncle Joe's mythology or whatever, of which the internet is full of
Yes.
garden mythology. And, it might work in Uncle Joe's neighborhood, but, we have to have, as Texas Ready that sells in 48 contiguous U.S. states, it's got to work in Maine and it's got to work in Arizona. And
Right.
so the Midlighter method is about the only method that will do that.
Okay.
The other thing that is really beneficial about the Midlighter method is you can back engineer your garden. No other system will allow you to do it to the degree that Midlighter will. He has a chart, and I know that you have a little
You have a picture
icon of it.
Somewhere.
That's right. That garden chart is available when you buy a seed bank from Texas Ready, and it does several things. If you can food or if you dehydrate or freeze dry food, and you want to serve green beans once a week to your family of 4, it tells you exactly, should I use bush beans or should I use pole beans? And since the bush beans finish in a 3-week harvest period and you get a bushel, that means that you have 4 times each pound, a bushel being about 70 pounds. So you have 4 times 70. That means that you are going to have over 52 jars of green beans to serve your family, 1 a week, which was your target. And you know that you only need 30 feet of your garden bed to accomplish that. And it's only going to take you a total of 9 weeks to get that task done. So what I like to do is have a family start with, what am I going to eat in a down economy? And we don't want to be eating the same thing over and over again because we get food fatigue. And so Texas Ready has about 70 varieties in each of our seed banks. Because as you know, Maureen, getting heirloom seeds at some of these nurseries, box stores, et cetera, is plumb near impossible.
Yeah.
And of course, they're seeds. A lot of the places are seasonal. If there's twinkling lights or crazy masks, Halloween and Christmas, the seed racks are not present. In the South, the seed racks for the spring garden are not available in October because it's all seasonal. Now, I know that up in Maine, they put everything together because you got one 95-day growing season. We're just really lucky in Houston, where I live, that we can garden year round. But anyway, it's important for every person to put their own personal seed bank together with the things that their family likes to eat. And Texas Ready is available to help you to do that. We have 5 different sizes, because the real question is, who's coming to dinner that you're going to let in, right? If your daughter's coming home with her boyfriend and the elderly couple, you're going to help across the street. Pretty soon you're up to 6, 7 people. And if you only have seed for 3 in your working drawer, you're going to all be pretty hungry. You're going to get to starve equally. So the very first question you need to ask is, how many are coming to dinner? Once you've established that, now you buy a seed bank that's going to cover that size audience. So we have kits for 2 people, 4 people, 6, 12, and oh my God, the church is here, 30 people. Well, you may have a big.
That would be me, because when my family's over. Yeah, they're over. They were over last night. I don't know how many we had. Some are out of town, some are already in Maine, and some are scattered. But yeah, for me, I need to be producing much more than what I have been. And I did notice that this year my lower garden does need some help. So I'm going to one of the helps that it needs is a better fence to section it off from the chicken run above it, because they keep getting in. Anyway, I'm going to do some test strips. I've got the 4G soil amendment, a fermented product, as well as what you have given me. And then, of course, I have areas that I can just keep going the way that they are. But I noticed that there's not as much coming up right now. And again, the chickens did get into it. So seeds that I planted, I think they got in there and they scratched and they ate some of it. But I'm going to do some test runs 3 different ways and and see how they come out. Now, I did not get seed from you, and I should have. I forgot to do that when we were together at Polyface last weekend. I have been buying my seeds primarily from Southern Exposure, So Right, and a couple of others.
Yeah,
So
and
they
they
are,
have some heirlooms there, so
yeah, yeah. So I want to try those out, and I had planted some heirloom corn. The chickens found that, so I'm not getting any of it. But my son-in-law will be putting up a new fence to divide the two sections. And so I'll be able to better control that. But one of the things that I think is key that I'm picking up on is that when you're taking good care of your soil and you're putting everything into it and onto it that it needs, and you're growing the right seeds, you can plant. I typically might do two successions of
right.
planting.
And it
But
depends on the length of time that
yeah,
seed should go, and that yellow chart will tell you that. So
yeah.
the arithmetic has been done every which way from Sunday.
Okay.
The
Well, I
chart
will
is also valuable because it tells you that, for example, Swiss chard is going to mate with your beets
Oh, I
and
did not know
hybridize.
that. Okay.
Right. And so if you like both of those things, what we need to do is we need to stagger that
The
production
planting.
so that
Okay.
the seed part, the seed stalk comes up at a different time so that it's not interfering or cross-pollinating, right?
Okay.
So that's a
Yeah.
concern, right? I mean, Queen's Anne lace will mate with your carrots.
Yes.
So we need to be very aware of what is going to, mess up our heirloom seeds. And this chart
Okay.
is a big help to that.
I'm going to order the chart and some seeds.
Well,
That
the
chart
chart
then would
comes
be
free in
okay.
each of our seed banks because it's such a
Wow.
valuable tool, and it is laminated, so it gets to go in the garden with you.
Oh, good.
Yep.
That's helpful. Great. Well, that'll be easy then. I was already planning on ordering one of the kits, so I don't have as much space as a lot of people have. So I do plant intensively. I do plant in succession, but I'm going to see how much more I can get by utilizing your product and the 4G. And I want to do a three-way comparison. So
Oh, I love it. That's great.
yeah, so we'll keep you posted. I think that about wraps it up for this week, but we're going to lead up into next week. Last fall, here on our YouTube show, I did my survey of food preservation methods talk, and I revisited that last week to see. I was considering doing something like that again. But then in talking with you, I want to go more into one particular method of food preservation, but I also want to compare nutrient preservation because we're not just wanting to fill our bellies with
That's right.
food. We're wanting to provide the nutrition that our bodies need in order to rebuild, maintain, restore, and even build new bodies for those who are having children. And so, what we do with the food that we grow, we may have great intentions and work very hard to produce as much good quality food as possible, but how we preserve it can totally destroy all of our efforts. So, we're going to go into talking about how different methods of preservation affect the nutrients and then what are some better options and some better means. So, that is the topic for next week. And this has been informative today, but I'm really excited to get into all of this next week because it's super
That's next
important.
level. That's
Yeah.
right. The garden is the foundation, but then we have to build upon that. We're so excited about, being introduced to your audience. We want to give a special promotion to your people. And
Oh,
if
great.
we're going to, for every seed bank that they order, we are going to give a free $25 packet of the nutrients to them.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's it. And what they have to do is just write the word table as a promo code. They're going to be asked for a promo code, and then
Okay.
we'll know that it's God's good table audience.
I'm typing that in and we'll put that in the show notes so that people can be aware. And of course, website, and all of that is in the show notes already. So friends, definitely take a look at what we have to offer here from Texas Ready. I'm excited about that. And you can get your free packet with your seed banks. So let's go for it. And
So if they want to go into more depth, Maureen, they just go to www.texasready.net, and up will come a cornucopia from seeds to the tools that they're going to need to preserve food.
Okay, good. That'll be so helpful. And then everyone, please tune in next week so that we can enjoy your questions. We want to answer your questions and enjoy your company and comments. So tune in next week, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, please share this with your friends. Please like and subscribe. Check out texasready.net. And if you want to buy us a glass of raw milk to help us, that would be great too. Yep. So you can click on a link for that. But we appreciate everyone's attention and tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week until then, everyone. And Lucinda, hang on.